Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Today, we are continuing our ongoing coverage of the Russia-Ukrainian war, and specifically, I wanted to address a comment in the comment section about the ongoing fighting, about the ongoing war, and about the U.S. and Western European assistance to the Ukrainians. So first, we'll start off with the comment in the comment section, and it goes as follows. In a perverse way, this is probably a great return on investment for the U.S. It will take 10 to 15 years for Russia to reconstitute its conventional military, so then the U.S. can focus on China. The U.S. will easily be able to replenish the donated material within a couple of years, given its mostly systems ammo. When talking about a U.S. Annual defense budget of $800 billion, the elimination of one of the U.S.'s near-peer adversaries' warfighting capability for the next 2 decades, a much greater proportion of future spending can now be directed towards countering the more dominant, relevant threat in Asia. Should China ever attack Taiwan, TW, will only increase the U.S. chances of helping Taiwan defeat China. Either way, the U.S. only emerges stronger. I disagree, and I'll explain. I disagree with some aspects to the comment, and I'll try to address each one of those. So first, the issue that it would take Russia 10 to 15 years to reconstitute. I definitely disagree with that. I think in all probability, the way things are looking right now, Russia, in about 2 years, is probably going to emerge, depending on how the war goes and who is in power in the Kremlin, is probably going to emerge stronger than it is now. If we look at the Russian defense budget, 60 some odd billion US dollars, it's now well over 80. Some say it's in the area of 90 to possibly 100 billion US dollars, Russian defense budget. The mobilization that is occurring inside of Russia as well. So at the end of this, we could very well see a much stronger Russia in a very much shorter period of time than otherwise if the U.S. would not have supported the Ukrainians. Furthermore, there will be more cohesion, and we're starting to see that right now, between other U.S. adversaries, between Russia and those adversaries. Case in point, Iran. Major technology sharing agreements are already underway. Any idea of sanctions against Iran and Russia supporting those sanctions is out the window. Russia will now be wholeheartedly supporting Iran, and Iran will be wholeheartedly supporting the Russian Federation. China. China now fully understands what would happen in case it decides to gain control of Taiwan. And I think China has always known that, has always known what the U.S. response would be. What I don't think the Chinese quite understood or fully grasped until hostilities started between Russia and Ukraine was the qualitative edge in U.S. weaponry. The qualitative edge in U.S. training and doctrine, and I'm just not going to answer that. Sorry, folks, I muted it. The qualitative edge the U.S. has, again, on technology and training is something now the Chinese are very, very aware of. And again, we are going to continue to see that cohesion, that more cohesive structure between China, Russia, Iran, and other nation-state adversaries of the United States. That's only going to increase. The U.S. will easily be able to replenish the donated material within a couple of years, given it's mostly systems ammo. That's difficult to say. It depends what is going on in the world. If the United States is facing a real threat, then yes, you could see the United States, I don't want to say go into a mobilization mode, but indeed address those shortcomings caused by the Ukrainian-Russian war in terms of how much equipment the U.S. has handed over. We could end up in a scenario domestically in which the United States simply can't afford it. And you would see defense cuts, and you would see a lot of those weapon systems, javelins, Stingers, 155 millimeter artillery rounds, HIMARS, not be replenished. There's already a backlog compounding that with weapon systems that the U.S. needs to supply to Taiwan. So we'll even see if that's even going to happen. But again, the big issue is going to be the gravitational pull of China and Russia together. If you have China, Russia, Iran, the lesser of the two partners, coalescing into a firm alliance against the United States, in conjunction with major mobilizations of both parties, meaning Russia, China, then obviously, to a lesser extent, Iran. That would be the greatest threat, the emergence of those three powers, possibly more. You have to look at Venezuela. Obviously, you have North Korea as well. That's a different story, and in all probability, South Korea could handle that. But China and Russia combined, compounding the issue of the war footing that Russia is now on, is going to be, without a shadow of a doubt, the greatest adversarial threat the United States has ever faced. Ever. And that includes the Axis powers during World War II, Germany and Japan. The nuclear capability of Russia, combined with both the nuclear and manufacturing capability and a rapidly growing technology factor as well within China that could be shared with Russia. Russia could also share some facets of its technology with the Chinese, but the manufacturing side of this is where it could really harm the United States in terms of keeping up with this Chinese, Iranian, Russian tripact, so to speak. But I think you're kidding yourself if you believe that it's going to take 10 to 15 years for Russia to rearm itself. I think Russia is in the process of rearming itself right now. And again, we could see a new offensive push by the Russians sometime, I believe, in late summer, that could show the onset of this buildup. And then beyond that as well. Again, with the help of Iran and the Chinese, you will probably see this from Russia. And then what are the Chinese doing? Well, I can tell you this has their attention. What's happening right now in Ukraine, if they have designs, if they have real designs on Taiwan, which realistically it is not going to be until 2030 at the earliest that China would have the capability of storming the island and seizing control of the island if they even garner that capability. So I get that the money that the U.S. has spent, in all probability, has, at least in the short run, stopped the Russians from seizing control of Ukraine. But in the long term, is it going to stop that from happening? It's difficult to say. This is, for all intents and purposes, this is just starting. Wars have a tendency of lasting 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. Look at the Iran-Iraq war. But generally speaking, large industrialized nations fighting each other with both sides fully committing last for years. So, at the same time, the U.S. population can be fickle. And given what's happening domestically inside the United States, I don't believe the U.S. is going to support the Ukrainians indefinitely. And I think the Russians know that. And the Russians are already starting to maneuver and do things politically to continue to divide the United States. And rightfully so. The case in point, the basketball player being released in lieu of the former Marine. Obviously, releasing the basketball player garnered support from one side of the political spectrum for the current administration, while the other side of the political spectrum is sitting there stunned. And again, continuing to create that divide inside the United States. And that's a whole other separate issue that I talk about in Lessons in Insanity. But again, that's just my 2 thoughts on that comment. Again, definitely longer than, much shorter time, 10 to 15 years, possibly just a couple of years, we could see Russia in a much more powerful position than it is now. And especially if the Chinese really start to support the Russians, things could look much differently just 5 years from now, depending on the outcome of this conflict that we're seeing now. But we'll find out in a couple of years. That's all I have for right now. Thank you for joining us. More to come very, very soon. And as always, have a good day.